You likely don't need to talk to your advisor all the time. There are a lot of times when you can just kind of continue in your plan without that, but there are life events that you should communicate with your advisor. I've got Chad Roller here with me today on Talking Sense, and we are going to talk about when you should. We're going to give you 7 examples about things that can happen that you need to reach out to your advisor to make sure your plan is still working, that your investments are still suitable for you. But before we get into that, I know we've talked about that before. There are some clients who want to tell us that it's Tuesday. And then there's other clients that we're chasing like, hey, are you okay? Is everything good? Because they're just kind of living their best life, but we're trying to help you find that happy medium.
Yeah. And I think what we've always tried to do with our clients is to make sure that they knew we're available. Mm-hmm. And there's no charge to that. And the way we have our fee structure set up and the way we are compensated, we make sure that they know up on the front end that we're not going to charge for every phone call, email, office visit. So, I think that's a good place to start there, is that you want a very open line of communication with your advisor. Yes. And make sure that you have that established. Yes,
I think even if you are just wanting to check in, that's acceptable. I had a client send me an email this weekend and they sent one almost immediately after, sorry for bothering you. And I was like, no. It's good. If you have questions, that's what I'm here for. But there are times, I think sometimes we've had clients come in and they've had a baby or they've switched jobs and we didn't know anything about it. And we could have helped them with some things. So that's what we're really getting at. And we'll start with the first one, which is a job change. There are a lot of different things that can go into a job change. Your budget's probably needed to adjust. You might have an old employer plan that's been orphaned, and you may have, not know what you can do with it. And in some cases, those just get cashed out. You can get penalized if you don't make a decision. And then, do you have any sort of change to the new plan? Is there something you need coaching on there? So that's one that for sure you need to reach out.
Yeah, so that asset allocation on your new 401k and understanding the match. Maybe they've got we've seen it time and time again, Teresa, where it's a 50% up to 6%, and then the match is not just weird. 3 for 3 or 4 for 4, right? Mm-hmm. So understanding some of those plan summaries at your new job, and then understanding what your options are with your old employer plan. That's a big one. Sometimes job change comes with address change, right? Because you're moving, you've changed locations, so we need to update your contact information. And also maybe it's your emails change because we're utilizing
a lot of people use their email from work.
So just your overall contact information a lot of times changes. And maybe it's another situation where we need to understand you've maybe working weekends or a different time schedule, and we're trying to get a hold of you, and we need to understand why that. So I think that open line of communication with your advisor brings a lot, especially whenever you're making a job change and understanding where you're at and where you're headed.
And I think, too, if you've taken a job that pays more, then you probably have some surplus funds. And what's going to happen if you don't have a plan for those is they're just going to get sucked into the budget. They're going to get spent where you could have been intentional with those if you're, for instance, paying down debt or you're working towards a financial goal that you're building. We can help coach you about how to best allocate those dollars. And if it's the opposite, where you've taken a job that has less income, then we can talk about the impact of maybe you need to slow down on some of your contributions or something. But either way, that's a major life change that needs to be discussed with your financial advisor.
And I'll say, added to here, major job changes. Maybe you're leaving the workforce and maybe you're going from a job to stay-at-home mom. Mm-hmm. And that's another one. Not your job's changing, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big one for us, is whenever you've got a spouse that's leaving the workforce to stay home, there's some things that is good to be discussing right there.
Mm-hmm. And then life insurance is another one that comes up when you switch jobs. If the employer was paying for group coverage, what's the new group coverage going to look like? And that's also why we like to have term coverage outside of the employer plan. But that's a whole other episode we'll talk about another time. Number 2 would be marriage or divorce. So whether you're getting married or you have gotten divorced, there are some changes that happen. Your beneficiaries need to be updated. Your name might need to be updated if you've changed your last name. You want to make sure that your accounts are structured in the best way possible. And really your overall plan changes. If we were planning for an individual and now they're married, we've got to adjust the plan for both of them now. And vice versa. If you were a couple and now you're in an individual situation, we need to make sure that you're still on track.
Yeah, and there's a lot that goes here with marriage or divorce, especially, when you're going from single to dual income now. How are the finances going to be handled? Is there a budget that's together? And a lot of changes right there, especially whenever you do get married and get started, as well as the life insurance. Again, this is another one of those times that we discuss the life insurance and see, what the status is there. And also, beneficiaries is a big deal. Maybe it's a blended family situation. So new marriages can bring up a lot of different life situations that we need to address.
And then the next one, purchasing or selling a home. You can tell a lot of these are like two different situations that could be affected. But if you're buying a new home or selling a new home, we just recently had a mortgage banker on Talking Sense. So if you're in the process of trying to purchase a home, I'd encourage you to go check that episode out. But if you're, there's things you can do in advance to make sure your credit score's where it needs to be. There are things you can do in advance to make sure you've got enough savings set aside for the down payment. Having somebody help coach you through that process is really great. And if you sold your home, there's tax implications to consider, and you need to have somebody in your corner to help you with that too.
Right. And so we've seen this a lot of someone selling a home, especially with the home prices where they've been. Maybe they're relocating to an assisted living, or maybe they're just downsizing. So there's a lump sum there from selling their existing home, and they're downsizing. So what do you do with that lump sum? How does that transition into your overall plan? So it's a great time to sit down and discuss. And then purchasing, again, life insurance, or are you married, and do you have a need to pay off that mortgage if something happened to you? So that's a big one to discuss at that time. But I think the biggest thing there, again, is making sure that your address is updated, the contact information. So there's a lot of changes along with selling the house or purchasing. Yeah,
I think there have been at least 10 times this past year where we get a notice from our broker dealer that says, hey, we're getting returned mail. And we have to call someone and be like, hey, did you move? Yep. So please, if you change your address, let your advisor know. We cannot do our job if we don't know where you are. The next one is birth or adoption of kids. So when you're adding to the population, you're also adding to your expenses. And then, so we talk about life insurance, budgeting, time spent, all of that needs to be updated.
Yeah, these are big changes right here. I think this is much bigger than selling a house. So I've been through both of these in the birth and adoption of kids. And so there was a lot of life changes that took place. And there's one of these things is definitely for the new parents out there that this is not going to be corrected overnight. This is a new transition of expenses and a way of life, right? Transitioning through your budget and working, you may need to stop contributions for a little while to make sure that you're on track with your budget and your savings, emergency. There's all kinds of expenses that come up during the first time. And you may have a spouse that says, hey, I want to stay at home. So that's a big change, especially when you have a little one. Sometimes that maternity leave turns into extensive leave, right?
Well, and I think, too, this is one of the first times where you really need to meet with an estate planning attorney. We don't do estate planning here at GenWealth, but we're firm believers in it. If you've got children, they can't directly inherit assets yet. So having something to protect your assets, if you've done the work of having life insurance, which is fantastic, and you guys have got everything organized as far as beneficiaries on your investments, that's fantastic. But how do you protect those assets for the kids and make sure that they're going to be okay, and that whoever gets the honor of taking care of them has the money to do so? I think that's the first time where you need to consider that. The next one on our list is planning for college. So, there are education savings vehicles, there are investment accounts, but really if that is a priority, having somebody help you and coach you through that will maximize, in my opinion, the outcome.
Yeah, and I think this is a discussion to have, especially with the advisor, and saying what's the potential outcome for scholarships. What's the potential outcome? There's so many different ways that they can go outside of school. Maybe it's not traditional college. Maybe they're going to go to some kind of trade. So discussing the different types of accounts and making sure that they're in line with some of the goals is huge to really start talking to an advisor and getting your options as far as utilizing a 529, or maybe just utilizing the UPMA account just as an investment account. So, and understanding what can and cannot be paid through that 529.
And if your child is nearing college, if you've kind of, you didn't have the opportunity to do the 529 or the UTMA early on, then maybe your advisor can talk to you about how to adjust your budget so that you can cash flow some of that since you're closer. Investments tend to need a little more time. So if you're knocking on college's door like I am with my 17-year-old son, then it's about adjusting your lifestyle to make room for that if that's something that's a priority for you. And it may not be. It may be, my parents were not in the position to help me with college. So our conversation was about how to maximize scholarships and how to make sure that I was applying for all the aid that I was eligible for to avoid loans. So it's not just necessarily about investment, but what other options you may have available. Your advisor can be helping you with that too.
And number 6, this is a big one. This is a big one. Inheriting assets or large windfalls. So some form of a lump sum that you've inherited or you come across, or the sell of something. This is one that we always recommend that you just have an advisor sit down, give you some objective to what you're thinking about, what your plans are for those funds.
And I think this is one of those times where going slow to go fast makes sense. Often when we have people who are inheriting funds, if they don't need them for something financially, important, there's not something impending that they have to take care of, we usually encourage them to pause, put it in, go ahead and get it switched. You don't want to let it sit in the other person's name long term because that can create chaos. Get it switched over, put it in something kind of not so volatile for a minute, and just let yourself breathe, grieve, get through the loss, and then make a decision about how you want it to be used. I think a lot of people feel a lot of urgency to honor whoever gave them that gift. But in the midst of your grief, you can sometimes make a decision that later on you wouldn't have made. So that's just my 2 cents on that particular one.
No, and I think if you don't have a plan for it, it will slowly, and the numbers show that whether it's you're winning the lottery or receiving inheritance, typically those funds are gone within 2 years. Correct. On the national average. I know that, and that's a wide range of investors, but for the majority of people, it's gone.
Yes, and I think it's sad because you get so excited about this opportunity, and if you're not intentional, it can slip through your fingers almost like water. And our last one is considering retirement. And I know for some you're out there going, look, I'm in my 30s. I'm not retiring anytime soon, but you need to think about it at least. It needs to be on your radar because the longer you have to prepare, the more likely you are to be prepared when you get there.
Yeah, and this is, obviously this is what we do, so we feel like this is a great time to contact us, but there are so many things that go into actual being retired, right? That transition of receiving a paycheck to now creating your own paycheck from what you've saved up, or whether it be pensions, and that's one of the biggest decisions that we have helped clients make is not really about their 401k, but what should they do about their pension. And that goes in line with their overall retirement income plan. So, when you're approaching retirement, considering what expenses that you may not be aware of, those are some of the things that the advisor can kind of walk through. And again, it's because we've had the experience of those working with those that have actually retired.
When I try to talk to people about what we do, I often use the phrase, our job is to find gaps. We find gaps that others may not be aware of. So Social Security, when to claim it, how to take your nest egg and create an income. Because, I could stand here with 100 pounds worth of gold, but if I can't turn that into an income stream, I might be wealthy, but I'm not going to be able to survive. And so you might have that large, income amount, that assets, but do you have a way to protect your financial independence? Do you have a way to protect your buying power over time? Because if you don't, then you don't really have a strategy or a plan. You just have a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and it takes more than a spreadsheet. And so, and there's things to think of, long-term care. Those things that you can discuss with an advisor to see what the impacts will be over your future retirement.
Yes, well, it's time for our last 2 cents, and Chad, I'll let you go first.
There's so many times that, and we've just highlighted 7 to speak with an advisor, but having the trust to know that you can go to them for and not get a solid third party opinion that's not emotionally tied to your situation and the now and then, and not making irrational decisions. The wrong decision at the wrong time can be impactful for long term.
And I would say that a sound financial decisions start with a sound financial education. And if you are trying to spark some financial independence in your life, right now we do have some tools on our website. You can download 6 keys to unlocking financial independence for free. You can either text KEYS to 501-381-5228. That's 501-381-5228. Or you can visit getreadyforthefuture.com/keys. Thank you so much for joining us on Talking Sense today. We hope this has helped you kind of figure out what to look for with your financial advisor in communicating. And if you like this content, check back next week. There'll be more. Thanks for listening to Talking Sense. And if you like what you hear, make sure and subscribe to the podcast to get all the newest episodes. The Jim Wealth team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or by calling our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. And while we like to have fun here, we're also financial advisors, and that means disclosures. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and Jim Wealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.